The weather from the 4th to the 7th of February was mostly mild and sunny, then foggy, about -2 degrees Celsius during the night.
From Ivan Hindi, Major General, Hungarian military commander of Budapest, to Minister of Defense and Chief of the General Staff, currently in Sopron.
The Germans are taking the civilian population required for labor to the front lines. Enemy fire is causing casualties and hindering their work. In most cases, they return home having accomplished nothing under mortar and infantry fire. The number of robberies committed in private homes is increasing. According to German reports, only minimal food supplies are arriving by air. None of this is being given to anyone, and in fact, wherever they can get their hands on it, they are forcibly taking away the meager supplies that have been sparingly distributed to the population, or the small stocks transported by the Hungarian army recruitment centers, but not sufficiently guarded. It is impossible to defend against the increasingly frequent forced requisitions and robberies committed by the large number of armed Germans behind the front lines.
János Tolnai,
15 years old. District 12.
Kis János Altábornagy Street.
The shelling has been going on for 3 days. It's impossible to leave the cellar anymore. There is no other shelter but underground, although we are always afraid that the whole house will collapse on us. Fortunately, the bomb that was dropped on the house only fell to the ground floor and didn't collapse the cellar. Yesterday, there was such an air pressure that the whole cellar was filled with dust. Where we were, the air pressure knocked out 3 bricks from the wall, although there was no shot. Our lamp went out and we couldn't see anything because of the dust. Dad grabbed Yuri and ran out with him. Terry followed with the bags, and as long as I could stand the dust, I grabbed our coats and then ran out with Mum after the others. Thank God, no major harm was done. When the dust settled and calm returned to the cellar, everyone took their old place and arranged their surroundings. Shortly after this, knocking and then a woman's voice calling for help could be heard from the wall section where the bricks had fallen out. Breaking down the wall further, a woman's face appeared through the enlarged hole on the other side of the wall. We hadn't heard her until now because the debris from the explosion had buried her, and she had lost consciousness for a short time, and only when she came to, she could cry out for help. By further enlarging the hole in the wall, we managed to help her into our cellar without any trouble. Miraculously, she survived the situation unscathed. The air pressure was soon followed by bomb explosions. When these subsided, some of us went out of the cellar to see what had happened. A terrible sight met our eyes. The apartments on the 4 floors above the cellar must have been wiped out by a bomb, leaving only a pile of rubble in its wake. The bomb had stopped just above the part of the cellar where we were. The bomb destroyed the homes of 10 families. On top of the rubble were the remains of broken furniture, and on the demolished walls, a stove, door and window remains hanging in the void proclaimed the destruction. One of the women standing next to me recognized her former apartment in the ruins, or rather its place, and started screaming hysterically. It was hard to calm her down, to reassure her. We are very tired. Our weariness is almost indifference. I just want to sleep. Sleep, sleep, sleep. The musty smell of the cellar makes us all sluggish and weak. We ran out of our spare candles earlier. Our kerosene as well. The cellar was plunged into complete darkness. Due to its lack of windows, only as much outside light penetrates our dark hole as the open exit door allows. Our vision is helped by those who still have a working flashlight. Some are considering breaking open the previously walled-up ventilation openings of the cellar, but the majority is against it, deeming it dangerous. One of the cellar dwellers came with the news that the Russians are approaching.
Juhász Eszter, 22 years old. District 11. Orlery Street 4.
We're having another difficult day. The sun is shining. It's real spring weather. The Soviet bombers, of course, arrived early in the morning, well rested, obviously wanting to make up for yesterday's idle day, working very diligently. Fortunately, thank God, I'm not nervous again, although when I thought about the expected bombing on quiet days, I was a little scared. But when the first bomb fell, I was as calm as I was before when our apartment was hit by a bomb. Again, we are getting them very close. Down here in the kitchen, the door and window blew out again, more than once. I'm very curious how long this will last, but the residents are already very fed up. Here, people sit next to each other like bats, although those dear little animals hang upside down by their feet, which would be somewhat strenuous for the elderly. A small candle or other light burns in the middle, and you can't see anything in the room. Huge shadows float around, and pale faces stare ahead. The doctor's assistant is diligently studying Russian. Today the weather is mild, it's melting, everything is dripping and swimming. I would love to take a long walk in the warm sunshine. My little son flinches at the loud explosions, and flailing his little hands, he says, "Leave me alone, you ugly airplane! What can such a small child think about the current events?"
Leshe Laszlo.
15 years old. Buda, District 1, Misarosh Street 32.
In the morning, there's terrible mortar fire. The front is here. They are mounting machine guns on the 2 balconies upstairs. Those animals wanted to place a machine gun in my room. I was talking to one of the Germans in the hallway when a mine exploded in front of the door and the German collapsed. One of the shrapnel pieces neatly cut off his fingers to the base. He's howling, poor guy. They are scattering our firewood logs from the garden, building barricades in the windows with them. They are also placing furniture in the windows. While they are building in one room, I am dismantling in the other. I'm carrying the furniture back. They are bandaging the wounded in the shelter's corridor. The Germans are moaning heartbreakingly. Aunt Margaret is so pale that you would think she is sick. My father's condition is worrying. He's completely mentally ill.
Lux Jula.
60 years old college teacher. District 12.
The first Russian soldier came to us at 6:30 in the morning on February 2nd. He asked if there were any German soldiers here. However, the German soldiers had already left, and we told him that there were only civilians here. Then the men had to come out immediately. The janitor and I had to put on our winter coats and go out with the soldier. We went up to Istanhegi Road, where a large Russian cannon stood at the corner of Zaykach Street. We had to pull this cannon down through the gardens into our garden. In the meantime, of course, they also chased the men out of other houses because the 2 of us wouldn't have been able to move this cannon. As soon as we pulled it down, we had to go up again to pull down another one. This lasted until about noon. Then they let us go home. While I was away, many Russian soldiers came to our apartment, and they broke into all the closets and threw everything out, and took everything they liked, especially clothes. They took the gramophone and most of the records, and what they didn't take, they smashed. They made snow camouflage out of the sheets and tablecloths, or covered the cannons with them, or rather, they ordered me to cover the cannons with my own tablecloths. In the afternoon and the next day, they took me out again to carry ammunition boxes. Meanwhile, more and more Russian troops arrived, and they all searched the whole apartment and took everything that was left. They were primarily looking for food, and they took what little canned food we had left, even the potatoes. Of course, under the pretext of searching for weapons, they searched every corner of the apartment, and they kept taking me away, sometimes to push cannons around, sometimes to carry ammunition boxes. We often had to pull the cannons away in the heaviest artillery fire and set them up in the designated place. The Russians hid in the cellars of the neighboring houses and directed us from there. Of course, there were plenty of injuries and some deaths among the civilians. Just as I put down the approximately 50-kilo ammunition box at a cannon and turned around, a shell landed behind me, which ripped open the stomach of a Russian soldier who was trying to adjust the cannon. But I was lucky again. Of course, we civilians had to take the Russian soldier into the nearest house. On the way, I slipped and fell. The Russian in charge kicked me for this. Towards evening, they let us go home. But we were barely home for a quarter of an hour when they came for us again. When I heard them coming, I hid behind the boiler and covered myself with some kind of sack. They didn't find me there. However, they found the janitor and took him away, and he only came home in the morning. He had to carry wounded people all night.